Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's kick off today's video with the story of parking wars and a showdown with a self-appointed spot saver supreme. But before we begin, best way to support our channel is to leave comments, like, and subscribe with the turned-on bell so you don't miss the new video every single day. Here we go. Middle-aged woman thinks she can save my parking spot for her sister, learns otherwise. I, 22-year-old female, was coming home from a coffee run this morning and got into a little argument. I live on a side street next to a private high school, and on Saturdays they often have a ton of sports games. On especially busy days, people will often park on the side streets rather than parking in the parking lots, as my street's closer to the fields where the games are played. I parked my siblings and I's shared car on the street as our driveway is taken up by my parents' cars. I usually park right in front of my house, and as I turned into my neighborhood and saw how packed the street was with cars, I was worried my spot would be taken. It wasn't taken by a car, which relieved me, but rather by a middle-aged woman standing with her arms outstretched. I put my blinker on and rolled down my window as I got in front of my house, and the woman asked me, "Parking for the lacrosse game?" Before I could say no, she cut me off, saying, "I'm saving this spot for my sister. She's just a minute away, but I saw this spot for her, so I told her I'd save it." What she said next still makes me laugh. She gave me a smile and said, "I know the family that lives here. It's my best friend's family." She pointed to my house. I do not know this woman. She clearly thought this lie would work on me, but her smile dropped when I told her, "I live here. This is where I usually park." She began to argue with me, saying that she was saving the spot because it was right next to the lacrosse field. I told her she could park in the parking lot, and she told me to park somewhere else. My street was filled with cars at this point, so somewhere else would have been the next street over. Despite how angry I was, I told the woman, "Please move, I'm parking here and I don't want to hit you." She crossed her arms and started cussing me out, especially when I put the car in drive and started parallel parking. She ran off saying, "Real classy, a-hole," and made her way towards the lacrosse game. Even if you didn't live there, first come, first serve? I hate when people try to hold a parking spot and then get unnecessarily aggressive with someone ready to park there. She was just mad you caught her out in a lie and that you didn't let her bully you to parking not in front of your house. And our second story. When my roommate tried to dump his dirty dishes on me, I found the perfect revenge. In college for my second year, I was living in a large house with some friends. You know how they say that living with your friends is a good way to make them no longer friends? Well, in this case, this would be true. It was just before winter break, and we were all recovering from the party the night before and getting ready to head to our families for the break. I needed to take a shower and run some errands, and someone was still passed out in the shared bathroom, so I asked my roommate, who had the master bedroom, if I could use his. He said no, really for no reason but to be an a-hole. Finally, after a long debate, he let me use it on the premise that I cleaned the shower after. Sure, whatever. After I get out of the shower, I come downstairs and he's cooking enough breakfast food for all four of us that lived in the house. I asked him what's the occasion, and he said that he's just cooking up all his food so it doesn't go bad. Rad. I grabbed a plate and he asked what the hell I was doing. Sure, kinda rude of me to assume that it was just for everyone, but I mean it's enough food for 4 grown men and then some. Then he tells me that if I want some of the food, he'll let me have a plate as long as I do the dishes and replace all of his food when we return. No? You've got to be kidding. He's not. I tell him, "Whatever, dude, it's all yours," and leave to run a couple of errands before I make my trip back to my parents' place for the break. I get home and all my roommates are gone. There's also a pile of all of the cookware in the sink with all the food still in the pans. I call up the roommate who cooked it all and asked if he was coming back to clean it. Nope, he isn't. He said while laughing, "Go ahead and have some." Mind you, if it was still on the stove or not stacked with pans touching the food below it, or water and some of the pans soaking the hash browns with dishwater, that'd be kind of polite, but no. The only thing I can think of as an appropriate response is to take the dishes and put them into a safe place so he can lovingly wash them when he returns about 3 weeks later. I stack the dishes onto his computer desk in his room, grab his towel, and use it to give his bedroom door a good seal to keep the freshness, then leave for the break. A few weeks later, I returned before any of my other roommates. No real smell coming out, but there's no way I'm going to give in to my curiosity and open that door. That's for my kind roommate. He gets home and stands at his door confused for a minute. Why is the door closed? Why is there a towel sealing the bottom? Good questions. He opens the door and all sorts of colorful language comes out of his mouth. I think he may have invented a couple of new words even. He storms over to me with one of the nastiest pans I've ever seen in my life, threatening to beat the crap out of me with it, and that he was going to smear all of it in my bed. I calmly remind him he forgot to do his dishes, so I set them aside so he could when he got home. Thankfully, he didn't beat the crap out of me or rub the food into my bed. He did, however, realize he was a bit of a jerk and then went and cleaned the dishes. The house was really cold for the next few days as all the windows were open, airing out the stench. It was really bad. As soon as our lease was up, he moved out and the rest of us moved into a different house that was smaller. Honestly, if he said, sure, but in return you gotta do the dishes, I would have been totally down with it. Even with the amount of dishes. It's his food he's sharing and he's cooking it. It's only fair that somebody else do the dishes. And our last story. Our friendly neighbors turned hostile when we refused to sell the family home. 6 years ago, my husband and I inherited a slightly run-down terrace house when his parents passed away. They had owned the property for over 30 years, and my husband insisted on fixing it up and making it our home. While the house needed work, we were excited to restore it and honor the family connection to the property. Little did we know our friendly neighbors had other plans. The terrace has 3 houses in total, ours on one end, the middle house, formerly a rental, and on the other end, the Smiths, a seemingly nice older couple who had at one time been friendly with my husband's family. However, their behavior quickly changed once they realized we weren't planning to sell the house. From the moment it became clear that we were staying, the Smiths became hostile, and the situation has escalated ever since. At first, the trouble started with constant noise, banging on the shared walls, aggressive thumping that shook the house, and loud, passive-aggressive comments whenever we were outside. Then, tenants in the middle house began acting as if our property was communal. One set of tenants repeatedly demanded to run through our front patio and garden as if it were their own. Another tenant insisted that our garage was first come, first served, and demanded one of our garage door openers. It was a nightmare dealing with the entitled attitudes, but things only worsened after the middle house was sold a couple of months ago and new owners moved in. It turns out that the Smiths had been briefing the new owners, spreading all sorts of misinformation and lies about us. They repeatedly told the new owners and anyone else who would listen that my late in-laws had promised them first right to buy the house upon their passing. According to the Smiths, the agreement was that only if they didn't want the property would my husband inherit it. This was, of course, a complete fabrication, but they've clung to this fantasy and used it as justification for their relentless harassment. The Smiths refused to acknowledge that my husband legally inherited the house. Their obsession, however, is entirely directed at me. As a longtime legal resident in the country, though not a citizen, they've fixated on the idea that I can't legally own property. Their conclusion? Everything that belongs to me, including the house, the garden, and even the garage, is communal property that they have every right to claim. Mrs. Smith takes every opportunity to loudly complain about me to anyone who will listen. She sits outside on sunny days ranting about how I need to get out of her house and yelling things like, I want her out of there. Sometimes she's even louder, spitting profanities and hurling accusations in a voice that's just loud enough for me to hear clearly. Despite knowing full well that my husband and I are the legal owners, she has gone to solicitors in an attempt to force us to sign over the property. They've even bragged, within earshot, about trying to have my legal residency revoked and to have me deported. It's not just words either. We've dealt with frequent damage to our gardens and flower pots on the patio, plants ripped out, pots smashed, and dirt scattered everywhere. We installed CCTV cameras to protect our property, but even that hasn't deterred them. Mrs. Smith has made up absurd stories claiming that I sneak into her property, especially at night, The cameras, thankfully, prove otherwise. Their behavior's only escalated. Recently, they've taken to banging on walls late at night and leaving notes on our gate accusing me of all kinds of ridiculous things. Mrs. Smith's obsession with me, insisting that as a non-citizen I have no rights, has reached a disturbing level. She's called me a thief, a fraud, and even illegal. The fact that I'm fully within my rights to live here seems irrelevant to her. Finally, after years of enduring this harassment, we decided enough was enough. With the evidence collected from our CCTV cameras and written records of their behavior, we filed for a restraining order. The harassment order includes provisions that bar them from contacting us directly, making defamatory statements about us, or stepping onto our property for any reason. Additionally, they're prohibited from causing damage to our property, and any further behavior like this will lead to criminal charges. The restraining order has brought some relief, but I can't say I feel entirely at ease. While they've quieted down slightly since being served, they still glared daggers at me whenever I step outside. I can tell they're fuming that their attempts to intimidate and bully us have failed. This house belonged to my husband's family for decades, and no amount of lies, harassment, or tantrums from the Smiths will drive us out. As for Mrs. Smith, I can only hope she learns that throwing a tantrum doesn't get you someone else's house. Until then, I'll keep my head high, my garden thriving, and my CCTV rolling. Here's hoping the restraining order keeps them in check, and that they realize their behavior won't get them what they want. In the meantime, keep enjoying your garden, your home, and the knowledge that they've utterly failed to break you. You've earned every bit of peace you're reclaiming. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.